wood. The history of the world is introduced to us with great dates and accomplishments, but it all started small. Our ancestors had survived millions of years of evolution, in which the processes they mastered, hunting, farming, and gathering, as well as inventing new tools, wood and stone, bone and animal skin, felt, clay, and iron and gold, are all natural materials that have changed the course of civilization and the events in Kazakhstan. Since ancient times, man has been unified with his environment, with the mountains and rivers, the lakes and fauna and flora. The diverse and amazing plant life on our planet has given man everything that he needs: food and drink, medicine, clothing, housing, and fuel. And man has a special relationship to trees. It's not because the trees give oxygen to man, but it's also the ability to survive on the planet. In fact, it is a real symbol of an intellectual culture. The symbol has many names: the tree of life, the family tree, tree of knowledge of good and evil. It symbolizes the central axis of the world, connecting heaven and earth, cycles of life, death, and rebirth. We have come a long way, developing and improving. Has mankind been able to go through life's difficult paths without a tree? We will try to find out the answer to this question. But first, we need to find out when trees first appeared. During the Earth's formation, our planet underwent a rapid and significant structural change. The core of the Earth formed, and volcanic activity decreased. The salinity of oceans then therefore increased. Water and atmosphere then appeared. Under such conditions, life emerged. The first organisms developed the ability to use visible light as an energy source. The protozoan single-celled algae and fungi appeared in the oceans about 2 billion years ago, and they resembled modern moss. The more complex plants appeared then, and they had roots and stems as well as leaves. But the main plant mass on land was made up of green algae, which grew throughout the planet. Over time, grass and ferns appeared. Prehistoric trees were the first ones on the planet that had branches and were growing separately from their main body. The Earth was already covered by forests by the time of the dinosaurs. Wood. There are about 3 trillion trees growing on the Earth. They are the most powerful natural resource on the planet, and one of the largest living organisms. A quarter of the woodland on the Earth is taiga, about 15 million square kilometers, One large tree consumes as much carbon dioxide per year as one modern car emits per over 40,000 kilometers. There is a special day called the National Day of Forest Planting in Kazakhstan, and it is celebrated twice a year, in both spring and autumn. Trees located in the desert are valued for their high content of water. The following trees are the most long-living ones in Kazakhstan: juniper, which may live for more than 1,000 years, Siberian larch, and oak. We need to collect 80 kilograms of wasted paper in order to save one tree. For a very long time, people did not know how to control fire on their own. However, by means of strong friction, using one piece of dry wood against another, they learned to carve a spark, and this allowed mankind to control fire. There are more than 100,000 species of trees on our planet, and all of these creations of nature are worth our attention and admiration. But the most amazing among them are the Methuselah tree, which is about 5,000 years old. It is considered to be the oldest living tree on the planet. Baobabs live about 4,000 years, and this tree absorbs water in a rainy season like a huge sponge. Bottle trees are interesting due to their shape, which they acquire from the arid local climate and lack of moisture. There is also a competition for the title of highest tree on the planet among the giant trees. The highest one is Hyperion, or the evergreen sequoia. Mangrove trees also grow in the water and are also amazing. They have adapted to the increased salinity of the water and the lack of oxygen in the soil. One of the oldest Japanese bonsai plants is called the white pine. It is 400 years old. The rainbow eucalyptus has got its name due to the unique property of wood, which has different color shades of fibers depending on the season. Wisteria is also an incredibly beautiful, decorative vine. The flowering of this tree is an irresistible, truly amazing sight. Paper, a wooden table, and a piece of coal. What can unite all of these absolutely different things? They have different properties and different purposes. The answer is wood. It's amazing, but all of this wood has undergone some kind of physical or chemical transformation. The paper ignites very quickly and then burns rapidly, turning into soot. When people learned to keep and maintain fire, they started making it with the first type of fuel available: wood. Wood burns well and releases a large amount of heat. Fossil coal, which retains heat for a long time, was used by many people later than wood. The name charcoal indicates its origin. Its formation relates to the decomposition of parts of the plants and trees. Coal has the ability to smolder and retain heat for a long time. Nowadays, wood is useful as fuel as well. And in past times, dry wood allowed people to survive cold winters. The boy was returning home. His hands were completely numb from the frost. He brought his blue fingers to his mouth and began breathing on them, trying to warm them at least somehow. He came down from the hill and saw that his mother had leaned over the ice-bound river and took water into a tub. His father was chopping down a tree not far from her, near the grove. The boy approached his mother and was surprised that his mother and father were here by the river, not at home. He started to complain to her about the frost, that he was very cold. His mother was always kind and affectionate, so she hugged her son, but immediately released him from her arms. The father's severe eyes stopped at the teenager's face, whitened by frost. His father was silent, frowning in displeasure, and his hands broke the dry branches. He put the branches in one big pile. He was in a hurry. It would soon get dark, and he did not want to waste time trying to tell his son everything that outburst in him. But he could not resist, and began to speak sharply. The boy listened to his father, but the accusations that he did not collect and did not prepare firewood for the stove, when he went to the neighboring village for salt and flour, the teenager wanted to justify himself, and began hastily saying that he was playing with the slides of the neighbor's boys, and that the next day he would have time to do everything. After all, there is still wood at home. His father smiled at his son's words. He shook his head and began to explain to the teenager that the wood was not coal and burned quickly. You need to put logs on the stove 2 or even 3 times at night to keep the house warm. Apparently his son had completely forgotten that a felled tree first should be dried for a day near the stove. Otherwise the fire cannot be burned. There are severe frosts, and if you do not prepare the firewood, the house will immediately cool down. But what about small children? His little brother and sister. They could get sick from dampness and cold. He was ashamed and regretted it. He knew that his father was scolding him for a good reason. The cold struck through the boy's back. Despite the Zamara coat, he knew that his father saved his family then and will do the same again. He again felt great shame, very much ashamed, and he decided that from now on, he would be stoking the stove in the house by himself. Wood is not only used to maintain heat and build houses. At all times, masters create their masterpieces from this figurable and pliable piece of wood. No matter how many new materials appear, wood remains to be the most indispensable one. The master sorts out various species of trees in his head. Pear and applewood gives a clear crystal tone, maple gives sonority, and birch or larch sound soft and warm. There are a lot of tree species, and each one has its own special properties. As a true master, he feels the character of different tree species and his continuity with them. The dry, sinewy hands of the master gently touch the bark of the tree. Then the movements become faster. His fingers felt the trunk and tapped confidently on them. The old man took his hand from the bark, carefully examining the tree once again, and shook his head. It was not the tree that he needed. The ability to properly use the material comes only with many years of practice. Although old age makes this old man bend down to the ground, it can do nothing with his wiry, fast, and agile hands. He feels the wood with his fingertips, and even if the eyesight leaves him, he will always be able to cut a dumbra by touch. He was looking for the right wood, and finally he found what he needed. Over the long years of his life, he knew well that absolutely everything affects the quality and purity of the sound of a dumbra. The type of tree, its age and texture. Yes, the Aksakal thought, looking at the strong trunk. This one will sound very good. A good dumbra sometimes cost a whole herd of horses. If the sound of a musical instrument was clear or unusual, the master's fame was just unbelievable. And on big holidays, the jigits organized by Gaz, which were competitions for the right to receive such a dumbra. It will be alive in the hands of a real musician. It will laugh and cry with him, rejoice or be depressed. And as long as its music carries on, people will keep listening to its magical timbre, as if spellbound. The Aksakals chose the best tree and began working, taking the necessary tools. Pieces of wood fell on the ground, and the log begins to take shape. The quick and skillful hands slowly transformed this wood into a beautiful dumbra. He was sitting under the open sky, and his thoughts flowed smoothly like waves, rolling over one another. He reflected that the type of dumbra and its form could change depending on the traditions and customs of this or that aul, which is a village, and on the art of the master himself. He thought and knew that as long as he lived, he would create his instruments, and the best musicians would then play them. Nowadays, this craft is not forgotten. If in the past the master spent almost a month creating a dumbra, in the modern workshops they are significantly faster. A team of creative people create musical instruments using skills mastered over the centuries, although there are masters working individually as well. There are many nuances in creating a dumbra, which include dozens of parts. There are two common types of manufacturing in this case. The whole massive dumbra, where the body is cut down immediately from the whole piece of wood and then assembled as one. The shape of the dumbra varies depending on its locality, but nevertheless, the dumbra has retained its musical structure and appearance over the centuries. Many details are considered in manufacturing of all musical instruments. It is necessary to use a tree of long-term aging without uniform signs of rot or dampness. Otherwise, it will not produce a good sound. A long, painstaking process is completed by staining the tools and then decorating it. The instrument takes time to sound at its full power. The work of the craftsman will be appreciated while the music is played. Nowadays, wood processing and manufacturing of products from it are carried out in factories and mills, equipped with various types of machinery, according to their strictly developed technologies. The development of this industry is due to the needs of the economy and population. The wood industry is the oldest among all industries. Logging depends on the wealth of the forest territories. The technological process of manufacturing products is heterogeneous. It includes various types of wood processing. At the factory, raw materials undergo chemical and mechanical processes and further recycling. Many workflows use machines and are automated. As a result, the quality is increased, as well as the quantity of products. The products of this industry are used not only in the domestic sphere, but also in various types of mechanical engineering, such as the production of cars, ships, airplanes, and so on. Wood. About 20 grams of wood is needed to produce one A4 sheet of paper. Wood is mainly composed of dead cells. In sequoias, for example, the world's tallest tree, they can produce a huge amount of wood, but this wood is almost impossible to use as it is very fragile. Most often, this very beautiful wood can be found in not so many good-looking trees. The world's most expensive wood is from the mahogany red trees. The hardest wood in the world belongs to the Schmidt birch. This tree is so strong that it is impossible to cut down with an ordinary axe. About 15 billion trees are cut down annually. A variety of materials are used in the arts and crafts field, but the most common from time immemorial is wood. Handicrafts have evolved over many centuries. The development of wood carving was facilitated by the simplicity of wood processing, its accessibility, and rich Kazakh traditions. When you look at products made by masters, you can never get tired of being surprised by their fantasies, how they can artistically combine natural materials and their creativity. The material for the manufacturing of desktop compositions and figurines may be a snag, a branch, or a trunk of a tree. The master brings this workpiece to the desired size, aligns the surface, and removes the nicks, burrs, and knots, and cuts off the edges. A huge variety of tools are required to perform this carving. The finished product is a unique piece. The volume of all sides of the figure are lively and figurative due to the precise proportions. Finding your own unique style is not easy, and for the master his style is recognizability, first of all. And that is his world, his fantasies that have come to life in his works. Our whole life depends on trees. Trees influence the ability of clean air, protect and form the soil, and preserve the diversity of wildlife. Trees form an ecosystem that regulate the heat and cold, and retain large supplies of water and generate moisture. We should never forget about the sensitivity and respect for nature. Perhaps leather processing is one of the oldest crafts on Earth. Primitive people began to process animal skins many thousands of years ago. In our next program, you will learn all about leather products, when and how they began to be manufactured in Kazakhstan.